Oh shit, it took long enough to get down.
Alright guys, so what's up? Welcome to another video by Valley Crew. Today we're going to be going over pretty much what you need to know, and pretty much a review of the big turbo on the Focus ST. This is my 2015 Focus ST, and it is big turbo, and let's talk more about that. So pretty much what you're going to need to focus on when you're preparing to do this type of modification and upgrade your turbo, basically pretty much like every modification, like bolt-ons you can do, you might as well do, because if you don't have most of everything that you can bolt onto the car without getting into engine internals, that'll set you up in the best situation for your car to make good power and reliable power. So let's get into what I have done to the car. So you can see it. I have an ATP front mount intercooler right here, and it's just bigger. It can contain more volume of air, and it cools a lot better than the factory thin and plastic end tank intercooler. So that, in my opinion, is a huge benefit when you're trying to build high pressure with boost and keep the temperature down, because when you compress air it heats up, so you're going to want a bigger and more efficient intercooler to cope with that. So that's a huge part. And I'll pop the hood. So on this car I decided to go with the InGen right here. This is the InGen short ram intake, and it's the black finish, mainly because I wanted to flow as much air into the engine as possible. And I mean, that's ultimately what you want to do. An engine is essentially an air pump. The more air you can get to flow out of the engine more efficiently and at a higher velocity, the more power you will get out of the engine. So with that being said, you want to do as many modifications for airflow as you can. So intake, full exhaust, things like the upgraded front mount intercooler to hold more volume of air. And yeah, I mean, engines, when you think about it, they are pretty simple. It may not be as simple to get that power out of it. Obviously it takes tuning and experience when it comes to that field to get the optimal power out of the engine. But when you start talking about upgrading your turbo, that's when things get pretty interesting. So my exhaust setup, I have a catless 3-inch downpipe and then 3-inch all the way back. And then this is the agency. At first it started off as an agency power 3-inch tri-tip exhaust, but eventually I mean the resonator that comes with that exhaust is a little, it takes away from the actual sound of the car. So I decided to go with the MBRP 16-inch resonator. It helps the car sound a little bit more lively, and gives it a little bit more character, get you the pops and stuff that you would like. But yeah, that's the exhaust. Another thing, when you are upgrading your turbo from the factory turbo that comes with this car, you have to keep in mind that you are taking away the recirculating ability for the bypass valve for the stock turbo. And we actually have a turbo right here, so I can show you. So alright, so this right here is your stock Focus ST turbocharger. So when you do an upgrade like, Boomba makes one, Turbo Smart makes one, Forge makes a blow-off valve for these cars. Typically with the stock turbocharger, that location is right here on the actual compressor housing of the turbo. And I mean, when it comes to cost and everything, when the manufacturer's designing this, it makes sense, but at the same time, there's not much variety you can go with, because you can't really run brands like HKS, Greddy, or Teal or anything like that with this kind of setup, unless, which I did before I got the HKS blow-off valve with the big turbo. you can get a block off plate that blocks this, that way you can run that sort of thing. So onto the blow off valve, because the new turbo, I have a Garrett GTX 2867R turbocharger with a 0.64 AR, and I'll go into detail about that later when we start talking about the turbo. But that new turbo does not come with this, I guess, ability. It's a solid housing which doesn't have this opening here. So in that case, you have to switch over to something like an external or 100% or recirculating blow-off valve that I'll show you right now. So if you can see, that is an HKS blow-off valve, and the way that it's mounted is actually pretty cool, because there's another way of mounting the external blow-off valve throughout the entire charge system that I forgot what company sells it, but they make this whole cold side charge pipe that has that fitting on it so that you can fit whatever blow-off valve you're planning on running. So that is actually the same brand as the Intercooler, ATP, and they make that elbow that allows you to adapt whatever blow-off valve that you choose to run right on the elbow of the intercooler, which is actually really cool and really convenient, because this was only $50 while the other charge pipe was well into the 300, 350 range. So that saved money and it still does the same job. So I'm gonna take the engine cover off just so we can get a better view of my small but still functional catch can. So my catch can, I only have one at this point because there is a PCV system in the rear of the engine and underneath the intake manifold. So later on when I have my other built engine, that's when we're gonna get to that. But this guy right here, a catch can in a turbocharged, pretty much any high horsepower or a car that you're gonna be driving aggressively, a catch can is very important because it keeps oil from recirculating back into your intake system, causing, oil in your intake it can cause a lot of bad things, but my main concern was the lower octane, that the octane rating that the oil puts into the combustion chamber, and that is the last thing you want. So catch cans are very important. And back here, you can't really see it. With these cars, I don't know if any of you owners know, but the turbo is way in the back, and yes, it was a pain to install, trust me. And yes, I did install it myself, and I've had it installed for like a year and a half, right? So, yeah, I think like a year and a half I've had it in. So, I mean, as long as you check on it, make sure everything is okay, make sure everything's tight. There was a situation where my exhaust housing for the actual turbo became loose, and I had to tighten it, and it was causing a very bad exhaust leak, but we got that fixed. And yeah, besides that, I have no complaints with this turbo. It does its job, and it does it great. And like I said, it is a Garrett GTX 2867R, and it has a 0.64 AR, and basically what that means is it's a smaller AR housing on the turbine side, so the exhaust side, which allows the turbo to spool a lot faster than if it were to be larger. And that's more what I want, because I didn't want to upgrade my turbo with some stupid amount of lag that you would get with usually what you would get when you upgrade your turbo. So this turbo is great, and the company that sells it's basically a bolt-on turbo that comes in a kit that ATP makes. So same company that made the intercooler, same company that makes that elbow for the blow-off valve adapter, they make the kit to bolt on to the head of this engine. So with that being said, let's get into what makes this car tick when it comes to tuning. So coming into the car, there's multiple ways of tuning this car. One of the most popular, and most renowned companies that does a lot of work with this car is Cobb. So I went and got myself a Cobb access port, and this was one of the first things I bought for this car when it comes to the power, and I highly suggest getting a Pro tune, like an E-tune on this, or maybe not even E-tune, maybe just getting a dyno tune. I would not recommend running an off-the-shelf map if you're planning on buying an access port, because there's been it's too many cases of people doing that and that causing their engine to fail. So highly recommend against that. But this is what I used to tune the car based on the setup that I have with the big turbo, the intake, the exhaust, the 100% atmospheric blow-off valve. Everything is tuned properly so that everything can work in sync and the car will be reliable and safe even when I decide to have fun with it. So with that being said, the people who tuned my car are Stratified Tuning, and it's a company based out of Canada, and I haven't had any issues. They allow, you know, flat foot shifting tunes. You can get the pops and bangs, which I'm not too much of a fan of, but some people are. And they do the big turbo tune as well. And it's kind of cool because the way I got the big turbo was in a kit. So I got the big turbo and I got the tune with it. And the reason why I can push very close to 400 wheel horsepower in this car is because of another thing that I bought with it that's called auxiliary fuel, and we'll get into that right now. Alright, so a lot of the time people kind of they don't really have a lot of knowledge about this kind of stuff with this car. Pretty much most of the owners in at least my general area of this car, they don't really know that this is an option. And pretty much what it is it is an auxiliary fuel system. So this box right here, it's by Stratified. This box is the controller for the auxiliary fuel system. So basically what this does, this is harness that goes all the way along here, and I did install this myself. It's not really that hard. And the harness taps into each individual coil pack, and that reads RPM. And then it also ties into this harness right here that goes to your map sensor, and that measures boost pressure. When you take that into consideration, that box can read RPM and boost pressure, that is what allows the controller to have the information it needs to send the signal to these separate injectors right here, which is what I was pointing at earlier. So this right here is the separate fuel rail that supplies these two injectors with fuel, and they're always supplied with fuel, but they will not inject the fuel until the signal is sent to the injectors. So this is the line that right here that connects to the high pressure fuel pump back here. Pretty much tap into that, and I'm gonna get more into detail with this whole system in a later video, just because there's so much, you know, that we can talk about. But this system is one of the things that allows this car and this turbo to produce such high PSI. My turbo peaks at the highest I've ever seen it was 29.95 PSI. That's a lot for an engine that's not built, has factory internals, and I mean, it's phenomenal. Also, this car doesn't just run on pump fuel, it does run on E30, so it's a mixture of ethanol and 91, but we can get to that in a later video. So, with all this stuff being said, and you know, I mean, I just hope this helps anybody out there debating on whether or not they want to, you know, go on this route. You don't necessarily have to do everything that I've done to my car. You can get a big turbo, run a catted exhaust, run a lower diameter exhaust, not a 3-inch like mine, and you know, you can make decent power. You can make definitely more power than factory, but if you want to get the most out of the turbo and get the most potential, the most efficiency out of the turbo, I've found that these modifications that I've done to my car have helped dramatically. But like I said, I don't know if I said it earlier, but I'm building an engine for this car. We have it at Ben's house. It's kind of going to be the true test of what this turbo can produce, and I'm really excited for it. I mean, the support from you guys really helps a lot. I mean, without the support from you guys, I wouldn't be able to make anything with this car possible. So the more of you guys that support us and our channel and what we want to do, the more I'm going to be able to do fun stuff to this car, and all of us are going to be able to do fun stuff to our cars. So yeah. So when it comes to whether or not you should or shouldn't invest in a bigger turbo for your Focus, it really all depends on what application you're going to be using it for. I bought a generally smaller big turbo because they do sell bigger ones. The company ATP, they do manufacture, they don't manufacture them, but they sell kits with bigger turbos with more potential. But that's not what I wanted this car to be for. I don't want this car to be a straight line car. I don't want it to be, you know, oh, catch me on the streets and let's do some runs. Like, that's not what I want this car for. I want this car to be made so that it can go around a track and, you know, side roads, back roads as quick as possible, and be snappy on the throttle when you need it, and not I'm gonna mash the throttle and it's gonna take a couple seconds for the boost to build. No, that's not what I wanted. I mean, if that's what you want, that's cool. I mean, it's your car, it's what you want to do, but it all depends on what you want to do with your car. I mean, bigger turbo, you're obviously gonna get more top end. Smaller turbo, you're gonna get more snappy response and have that, you know, still lively feeling to the car, where you're not gonna have a dead feeling when you push on the accelerator. And that's kind of what I wanted to do. But all in all, for still being a smaller big turbo, this thing is insanely fast. I would honestly say it's a little bit too much for, you know, public roads, but at the same time I don't really use that power all the time, so it's all dependent on the driver in the end and what you want to do with the car. So we're just gonna drive around real quick and get a few clips, that way you can hear it and kind of, you know, hear the character of the car, and I can show you what she sounds like. This thing is ridiculous. Well, yeah, these cars are a lot of fun from factory, you know, off the lot. They're a blast to drive. But as you kind of get used to the power, you'll realize, like with the stock turbo, you'll be like, oh wow, like when you mash the accelerator, you'll feel that instant glue, that torque. But then you'll notice it starts to, you know, just fall. It plateaus and almost like falls on its face in a sense. And it's like, once I got used to that and I kind of wanted more, that's what encouraged me to want to make this upgrade. And I feel like if anybody's out there thinking about it, I mean, if you can financially, you don't want to put yourself in a financial hardship doing this. I mean, it's kind of worth it, but you don't want to do that. You don't want to put yourself in a bad situation. But yeah, I definitely recommend this to anybody who's looking for that extra like punch when it comes to your ST. I mean, it's well worth the money. Like I was saying, compared to the factory turbo, I mean, the difference in spool, I mean, it is noticeable. I mean, because like it is a bigger turbo, but like I said like earlier, there are bigger sizes, but I decided to go with the somewhat small. It was like a middle area, so I went with the middle area so that I can like still sustain that that lack of lag, but at the same time I'll still have that, you know, that punch, that power. So with the factory turbo, you'll notice, you know, the spool is immediate. It's like 1500 and you're there, you're already on boost. When with this car, it takes, I mean, with this turbo, it takes a little while, maybe about to get to 25 to 3000 for the turbo to really start, you know, turning air and actually start building boost. But right here, you can see it. This is evident. It says right here, 29.04 pounds of boost. So that in itself is evident that the turbo does do work, you know what I mean? So that wouldn't be possible without the auxiliary fuel and, you know, the switching of from pump gas like 91 and going from that to E30. So the auxiliary fuel upgrade isn't really, you know, too useful unless you are switching over to that type of fuel. I mean, I talked to my tuner and he said, you know, I got it for two main reasons: because of the extra fuel under boost, that way you don't lean out, and it does clean your valves. With this car, it is direct ejected and it does help with the valve cleaning, and it keeps the carbon buildup off of the top of your intake valve. And that was a no-brainer for me. It's because I want this engine to last until, like I said, the next engine is built. So yeah, I'm very happy with the whole package and my entire, you know, setup with my car. And yeah. In my opinion, I feel like this is just taking it to the next level. I mean, you can have stage 3, you know, bolt-ons and you have like the E30 tune and everything and making close to 300, but there's a certain limit to where you're going to be kind of stuck in the same area and you're not going to really be able to progress. And I feel like a bigger turbo is definitely a great option for, you know, finding that extra push and to get you, you know, where you want to be power-wise. So yeah, I don't really have anything much else to say. I hope you guys enjoyed our little video and enjoyed, you know, taking a look at my car, a little bit deeper look at my car if you're interested, and we'll see you in the next one.